Hey y'all, it's Dawn, and I'm so glad you're back. I've got another fun, budget-friendly DIY video for you today. I picked up this cute little truck from Dollar Tree for $5, and the rest of the supplies I used were from my stash. I wanted to add a farm-style bed to the back of the truck. To do this, I used 6 tumbling tower blocks and some craft sticks. And believe it or not, the craft sticks were a perfect fit. The truck bed has a little bit of a lean to it, so I placed the blocks in the bed and marked them with a pencil. I glued the craft stick to the first block and placed it in the back of the truck to make sure it was lining up the way I wanted. I placed the block at the other end of the truck and marked it with a pencil. And glued it to the craft stick. And then did the same thing with the middle block. I then glued another craft stick to the top of my blocks. I placed the rails in the back of the truck to make sure everything was still lining up. I did the same thing for the rails on the other side. I used antiquing wax and stained the rails. I stained both sides and the top of the blocks. Since hot glue isn't the best on metal, I used super glue for the bond and a little hot glue to hold it in place until the super glue set up. I found some of these small craft sticks and decided to use them on the back, and they fit perfectly also. I hot glued them to the blocks at the back of the truck and stained them to match the rest. And will you look at how stinking cute. I cut some vinyl and attached it to a mini chalkboard sign from my stash. I placed the sign on the rails and then placed a Christmas tree in the back. This is my new favorite, and the best part is it's interchangeable. Just make up a new sign and place something seasonal in the back. Let me know what you think in the comments. I used a paper mache cone and this chunky white yarn to make an adorable Christmas tree. And I have to say, this is one of the simplest Christmas DIYs ever. I applied hot glue in small sections and then placed the yarn on it. The only problem with this DIY is watch your fingers, or use the little silicone finger protectors. I burnt myself several times. I continued wrapping the yarn until I reached the top. I think I'm going to make a gnome hat with a smaller cone. I think that would be so stinking cute. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. And just look at how adorable this Christmas tree turned out. I used several of these mini wood rounds from Dollar Tree to make mini wood round Christmas ornaments. All of these turned out so stinking cute. You will be making them too. I painted the first round with Waverly Steel chalk paint and dried it with my heat gun. I applied and buffed chalk couture surface wax onto the round. I cut down this chalk couture transfer so it was more manageable for smaller projects. I applied the transfer and then applied a layer of bright white paste. I removed the excess and then lifted the transfer off. I used this Merry Christmas transfer and chalked the words Merry Christmas towards the bottom of the wood round. I applied a layer of Mod Podge to protect and seal the ornament. I strung a piece of twine through the hole. And I created a small bow with some Hobby Lobby ribbon and applied some small berries and the bow to the mini wood round. I love how the buffalo plaid turned out on this mini wood round ornament. And the striped bow was the perfect touch. For the second wood round, I applied a piece of painter's tape across the center of the round. I painted the top half of the round with Waverly antiquing wax. After the wax was dry, I applied another piece of tape over the stained portion of the round and painted the bottom of the round with Folk Art Imperial Red chalk paint. I used my Cricut, cut out the wording, and applied it to the wood round. I used some buffalo check wired ribbon and twine to create a small bow and hot glued it to the top of the mini wood round. And just look at how stinking cute it turned out. It'll look perfect on a Christmas tree. For the third ornament, I painted the entire wood round with Folk Art Imperial Red chalk paint. And dried it with my heat gun. I applied a layer of surface wax and used this reusable mesh transfer I got from Amazon. I really need to order another one of these. I have used this one so much, it really doesn't have that much stick any longer. I applied Chalk Couture Black Velvet to the transfer, removed the excess, and then removed the transfer. I cut out the phrase Merry Christmas Y'all with my Cricut and applied it to the wood round. And this was a little tricky because the vinyl didn't want to stick. I think that was because of the wax I had used, but I did eventually get it on there. I applied a layer of Mod Podge and a few embellishments to the top, and just look at how stinking cute it turned out. For the fourth ornament, I painted the entire round with Waverly Elephant chalk paint and dried it with my heat gun. Using my Cricut again, I cut out the phrase Let It Snow and applied it to the wood round. I then used a little Chalk Couture Snowflake transfer. I first applied bright white chalk paste and then went over it with shimmer frost paste to give it a little shimmer. To finish it off, I made a little messy bow and hot glued it to the top. I think this is my favorite mini wood round ornament, but it's really hard to decide. For the fifth ornament, I painted the entire round with Waverly White chalk paint and dried it with my heat gun. I placed a piece of painter's tape about 1/3 of the way down and painted the bottom portion with Folk Art Imperial Red chalk paint. I removed the tape and repositioned it onto the red portion of the round. I added another piece of tape, leaving about 1/4 of an inch of the white showing. I painted the stripe with Waverly ink chalk paint. I removed the tape and had a little gap, so I just free-handed the gap with the Waverly ink. I used my Cricut to cut out Ho 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 and applied the vinyl to the wood round. I also used my Cricut to cut out a small belt buckle and applied it. After applying a layer of Mod Podge to protect and seal the ornament, I strung a piece of twine through the hole and tied a simple bow and hot glued it to the ornament. And just look at how sweet this little mini wood round Christmas ornament turned out. All of these ornaments turned out so stinking cute, I can't decide which one I like the best. Let me know in the comments which one of these ornaments you like the best. Today's video is part of the 5 Under $5 challenge hosted each month by Missy from Crafty Cove DIY and Emily from Farm Charm Chic. This month's co-host is Krista from Krista's Crafty Life. You will find links to each of their channels along with a link to this month's playlist in the description. Now for another under $5 DIY. If you've been following me for a while, you know I've been trying to use mostly out of my stash this year, and I have a ton of tumbling tower blocks. I used some to create a wood Christmas tree. I figured out the design I wanted to go with first. I glued the blocks together using some craft sticks from my stash. I cut the craft sticks using a pair of miter shears from my Amazon store. I added Dollar Tree wood glue to one side of each of the blocks. And used a square to make sure the blocks were as square and level as possible. I added hot glue to the cut down craft stick and placed it on the back of the blocks. For the bottom layer, I used 7 tumbling tower blocks. I did the same thing for the next layer, but used 5 of the tumbling tower blocks. For the third row, I used 3 blocks. And on the top, I used 1. I connected all of the rows together with wood glue. And I used a cut down small craft stick to hold the single block to the row beneath. And a cut down large craft stick to hold the other 3 rows together while the wood glue dried. I used antiquing wax and a baby wipe to stain the tree. For the stand, I used 2 sets of 3 blocks and glued them together with wood glue. I used a single block and attached it to the back of the tree and to the stand. To complete the tree, I painted the stand with black chalk paint. And just look at how stinking cute. Just adorable and perfect for Christmas. I had these Dollar Tree party hats in my stash and thought they would make great mini Christmas trees. I used some Yarn Bee chunky yarn from Hobby Lobby on the first tree. I started at the top of the tree. I applied hot glue and started wrapping the chunky yarn around the party hat. I continued wrapping until I got to the bottom of the tree. For the second tree, I used a different yarn from Hobby Lobby. This yarn is more like a thin fur. I did the same process as I did on the first tree. Starting at the top, I added hot glue and began wrapping the hat with the furry yarn. It took longer to wrap this tree because the yarn was thinner, but it was well worth the time. For the third tree, I used this bandana from Hobby Lobby. I placed the party hat on top of the fabric and traced around it using a black Sharpie. I cut out the cone shape into 2 pieces of the bandana. The bandana is pretty thin, so that's why I used 2 pieces, so you wouldn't be able to see the color of the party hat underneath. I used a glue stick to attach the 2 pieces of fabric together. I then used hot glue to attach the fabric to the party hat. After I had the trees finished, I decided to add tree trunks. I turned the trees upside down and put a bunch of hot glue at the tip of the hat. Then I stuck a dowel into the hot glue and held it straight until the hot glue had time to set up. I put more hot glue to make sure it was secure. For the base of the trees, I used these wood slices I have in my stash and hot glued the dowel to the wood slice. I held the tree until the hot glue had time to set up. I had a couple of these rusty stars in my stash, so I glued them together and placed them on top of the first tree. On the second tree, I used this snowflake ornament I got from Hobby Lobby. I think these little Christmas trees turned out so stinking cute, and they were easy to make using these party hats. Let me know in the comments if you'll be trying to make these little Christmas trees. I would love to see how yours turn out. Please take a second to like this video and leave me a comment. This really helps my channel to grow so others just like yourself can find me. If you just found me, I hope you will join our little family by hitting the subscribe button. If you are already part of the family, thank you so much for your love and support. Y'all are the absolute best. Check out my new Amazon store for craft supply and farmhouse home decor recommendations. All the products I use from Amazon in my videos can be found there. Until next time, happy crafting!